Hello guys, so this is going to be a little update video on Devastation Evoker for 11.1.5. Obviously not a lot has actually changed, this has been more or less a quiet patch, mainly because things have been balanced. And for my Flameshaper video specifically, I know I posted it about a week before Firestorm was buffed, so you kind of included Firestorm into the rotation. Which kind of sucks, because it's kind of the case for every guide video out there. As soon as you upload it, more or less it's going to be outdated within the next 24 hours. But I'll pretty much just be including every single build that you are currently running and a build specifically for Horrific Visions. The one for Horrific Visions will be similar to the outdoor one, except it'll be a little bit different. Kind of like change up the pace, but it's also just generally better overall. And then we're also going to be going over a snippet for what I'm looking forward to and wanting to see for Devastation in 11.2 and possibly in Midnight. And then probably last is going over the received deep breath bug, which I looked at some data on things and it does not it doesn't appear to be intended, but I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, I hope you enjoy the video. So to start off with the talent builds that you've been running this season, this is the Flameshaper for Raid. It is pure single target, however, if you're wanting to go a bit more cleave, you actually take the point out of Honed Aggression and you put it into Eternity Spin. Obviously, you don't take the Essence Burst from Shattering Star. You don't necessarily need it, and obviously you are going to be casting Living Flame more often. However, the actual damage output from this is really high, especially just in pure single target alone. I know, just for instance, on One-Armed Bandit, uh, it doesn't happen often, but if you get really lucky with crits, you can open up with over like 25 to nearly 30 million single target damage. Obviously, of course, it's 2 adds that are right there for like the first 10 seconds, just because the engulf and fire breath crits. But other than that, in your evoker tree, pretty much change it to however you want. It's not really a necessity of what you actually need. You might need Unravel here and there, but it's not really big of a deal. And for the Flameshaper Talent tree, pretty much the exact same thing as always. It doesn't really change. Uh, However, if you need more survivability in your end, I would actually take Draconic Instincts. In Raid, it actually does a little bit more healing than Life Cinders, depending on how much damage your Raid is taking. If your healers are having a little bit of trouble, then Life Cinders would actually be a little bit better, but if your healers know exactly what they're doing, and if they're just actually actively pressing their buttons, then Draconic Instincts will always just do more overall. Next up is the Impulse tree for Flameshaper. Obviously nothing has changed as well. You're mainly just playing around Firestorm as much as you can, especially using the Scorching Ember stuff for your Pyre and Engulfs, and especially the 3 Pyres and Dragon Rage. As I said before, the Flameshaper tree does not change at all. If you find yourself where you are not necessarily a dot-heavy dungeon, which there's probably a good like 3 of them that are not that heavy, you'd actually check Draconic Instincts over Life Cinders, just because it does more damage. I've been in dungeons where Draconic Instincts has done upwards of 100 million damage, and then I've been in dungeons where it's done 20 million damage. It just depends on how much damage you're taking, and especially how good your healer is. Uh, it's not necessarily overhealing, it's just pure healing regardless. But regardless, Life Cinders will still pretty much always be your best friend. Especially in dungeons like Priory and Floodgate. It's really good in those 2 types of dungeons. Other than that, the Evoker tree actually is pretty static, it always has been. Flameshaper is really good at leeching health. It's actually way better than Scalecommander, by quite a large margin as well. So you always want to take Regenerative Magic. And then pretty much everything else is honestly up to you. You can, of course, take Spatial Paradox if you want to. You can take Time Spiral. You don't even have to take this if you don't want to. You can put it into something else if you feel like you need, like, Scarlet Adaptation or Ancient Flame or anything you pretty much want to do. But other than that, the Devastation tree is static for this one. You're pretty much, as I said, playing around the Firestorm and Scorching Embers, trying to do as much damage as possible with the percentage damage increases for the 3 pyres of Dragon Raid, Fire Breath, Firestorm, and Engulf. And yeah, nothing has changed. Just to also give a little update on the Flameshaper video for the rotation, it is outdated as I stated, but the only thing that is newly introduced, which obviously kind of already figured out at the beginning of the season, was Firestorm. So One of the things that you do with Firestorm is you basically allow any of your spells that can actually benefit from Feed the Flames to do increased damage. So let's say if you were ever in a turn, like a single target scenario, you would always precast Living Flame as free damage. For AoE, you would always try to do Firestorm, just so you can, like, let's say you need the Dragon Rage and pull. You can, of course, do Fire Buff, and then Firestorm, and then Dragon Rage, and then send both of your own golds, and that's pretty much your maximum amount of damage. So this next one is basically still the exact same as the M plus build, except this has a little bit more AoE and a little bit more cleave as well. The talents that you are not taking is both of the talents and Arcane Intensity. This is more AoE oriented at the price of losing a lot of single target. I did the math a while back, and it's about a 12% single target loss at a 6 or 7% AoE increase, which, depending on the dungeon, is probably not the best, but, you know, if you want to pad your numbers, then here you go. Alright, next up on the list is Scalecommander for Raid. There are not a lot of bosses where you're actually going to be running a Scalecommander. However, if you do, let's say if you're on Styx for prime example, or you are on Gallywix, this is kind of the tree that you would run, obviously, as I said before, and it's pretty much the same for every single Evoker Talent tree build. The Evoker tree is going to be based on what you need and what you want to use. However, the Devastation one is static. You're pretty much taking the exact same stuff as you always do, except if you're ever in a situation where you need more AoE, you take the power, or you take the point out of Power Nexus, put in the Charge Blast, and if you are ever in a like cleave scenario, you would actually take Event Horizon over Eye of Infinity. This is not the case if it's only one target or if it's more than 6. If it's any one of those, then you actually do take Eye of Infinity because it's more overall damage. However, if it's like cleave, let's say like one on Bandit for prime example, you'd actually take Eye of Event Horizon. Other than that, Scalecommander tree is the exact same, always will be. And on to the next one. So for M plus for Scalecommander, it is the exact same as last season, except obviously you're taking Imminent Destruction over Iridescence, same with Raid. You're always trying to just get as many Charge Blast stacks out as possible, and your Evoker tree can be based on whatever you want. However, overall is actually really strong this season. Well, I wouldn't say really strong, but there's more applications that it can actually be used on, so there's a good 5 or 6 dungeons that you can actually use this on. And to start off with the Horrific Visions and Outdoor Talent tree, it's pretty much the same as always for the Devastation. However, for Evoker, it is actually quite different. We're running Regenerative Magic pretty much in all constants now, and pairing it with Attune to the Dream. We're not taking Pentecow anymore. It's just really strong healing overall. Still having a lot of stun, a lot of daze, you know, a lot of hover charges, etc. This will pretty much guarantee your survival, and especially if you're going for the double question mark main boss of Delves every single season, this is the kind of talent tree that you'd always take. And last but not least, this is going to be the talent tree for any content that you want to solo, such as previous raids. I've pretty much taken all of this through the mythic and heroic versions of Dragonflight's raids, and this has pretty much been really good. It is pure single target. It's the exact same as our Flameshaper Raid build, except the Evoker tree is more of self-sustain, including you taking Draconic Instincts. I would argue that you don't really have to take Enkindle. You can take Expanded Lungs if you know a fight is not going to last long enough for it to really matter. Expanded Lungs offers a really big damage boost in short fights. However, in extended fights, Enkindle is slightly ahead by its own damage. Obviously, take an Unravel if you need to go against shields like Farrak or whatever, and, you know, as I said, just a lot of healing, a lot of self-sustain, and pretty much just pure single target. And if you have 80 fight that you need to do a little bit of cleave, obviously you just take the point out of Honed Aggression, and you put it into Eternity Spin like that. So I did state this in a community post beforehand, but I will introduce it into a video. I do have a Jackpot Tracker for Devastation Evoker's tier set, and of course I can add it to more specs and classes if people desire so. It's actually listed with my Imminent Destruction, because I just want to know when I can use it. However, as I said, it will basically track our stacks of Jackpot, obviously going up to 2, showing the timer, and just showing when we have it in general. I will probably be introducing this into my own UI, however I know Cooldown Manager will probably replace most of the stuff that people are using In the foreseeable future, I know right now, as of Wednesday, after the day of 11.1.5, I know people are pretty much just still waiting on the actual changes that are coming to the quota manager itself. So, like, basically what you have listed here is all that it'll show. You can't change anything about it other than, like, size and, I guess, just, like, the look of it and stuff. So you will only be using some of this. However, as of right now, you can probably use these three. Probably wouldn't use this one. I think Weak Warriors just do it a lot better, but if you decide to, then you go for it. The track buffs mainly will probably replace my passive buffs that I usually have over my health bar immediately. It pretty much just gives me exactly the kind of info that I want. And then if you guys are more of a minimalistic people, then of course, if you hide your action bars, you can just have these two show, and it'll pretty much give you the necessary info that you want. Besides that, depending on what exactly is changed with all of this and whether or not we can actually, I guess, choose the spells and passes that we want to show, I probably will still make my own UI. The one that I'm using right now, here, let me just close all of this. The one that I'm using right now is preheats, however, it is heavily edited. A lot of the colors and a lot of the spells are completely ripped out of it. In general, I like it more simplistic and stuff like that, and obviously I also have my own Dev Evoker procs and, as I said, stylus passives and stuff. If you guys are interested, then I obviously will include this as well into my own little pack. So the last thing that I do want to add is the changes that I would like to see for Devastation in 11.2 or possibly 12.0. It's not as bad as it was before, but it's still plaguing us, at least in my mind. Firestorm, I think, still needs to be redesigned completely. It was buffed at the beginning of the season, and it's actually a pretty useful button now. It's usually among your number 3 most damage, or like most damaging spells in M+ and stuff. And other than that, the actual usefulness of it is just the damage itself, and all of its passives are pretty useless, especially if your tank moves enemies out of the circle. Now, I know it only lasts for 6 seconds, but if you place it down, especially a proc that you actually get from Feed the Flames, that is entire Firestorm just going to waste, which I do not like that at all. Another thing that we have actually been saying this since the beginning of the expansion, I believe so anyways, or at least the beginning of the season. Filmonous Roar, it doesn't really make sense on why we have it for Flameshaper. I know it had a weird interaction with Catalyze. However, I wish this were just a completely different passive. I'm not entirely sure what you would change it to, but it does not benefit us that much. Another thing that I personally do not like, and I've actually taken a disliking to this as of this season, I didn't really care for it pretty much any other season because we almost never took it, and it is Honed Aggression. So Azure Strike and Living Flame doing 10% more damage, stacking up to twice if you have 2 points into it. I honestly wish this particular talent was just put into a 1 node, and then have Engulfing Blaze replacing it entirely. So Engulfing Blaze would be right here, and Ruby Embers would just be baseline for this particular one, or you would add an entirely new passive. Not entirely sure what passive you would add. I haven't really put too much thought into it. However, as I said, the Honed Aggression is really weak, especially because we almost never push Azure Strike outside of Dragon Rage. Other than that, one of the things that I also would like to see is these two talents change up a bit. It's pretty much been swapping every so often that we'll take Event Horizon and we'll go back to Infinity, then going back and forth. I would really like there to be more interaction with Fire Breath, not just for Flameshaper, but Evoker overall. Flameshaper actually does this really nicely, where we have a talent that will lower the cooldown of Fire Breath every single time we engulf. I would like something like that for Event Horizon. I have Infinity. I do like it, but in my opinion, I think it needs to be redesigned, do something else, or just have it a little bit stronger. Or obviously give us a proc for Scintillation to hit more than one target at once, like multiple times, instead of just once every like 15% chance that Disintegrate does damage. And then, as I said, add Fire Breath to Event Horizon. Obviously, you can probably lower the cooldown of it if you want to, maybe like 2 seconds, but I don't know how busted it would be if it were 3 seconds as well, but regardless, I would still like it to be added. But, Scintillation I actually really miss using. I know I still use it in Raid, but in M+, as Flameshaper, at least you almost never use it anymore. I would like more interaction with it, and I have Infinity. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, thank you for watching, obviously, and I think I said this in one of my previous guide videos that I will be making a written guide video to have it actually updated, so it's not like automatically updated as soon as it's uploaded. This written guide will most likely be released with the next season guide, and of course it's always going to have the Made Simple series. Anyways, thank you for watching.